right in front of my mind when I think about it are many images of people whom we generically designate as the poor. I think of one family to whom I brought a food basket many years ago. It was a mom and her 2 young children. And I delivered food baskets to quite a few other houses, but this one was the poorest of the poor. And I can hardly even call it a house. It was more like a tool shed that they lived in. And I choked up when the next day she was the only one of all whom we had delivered food baskets to that called the church to give thanks. And then I think of times when I wasn't sure if I did what was right or not. I can think of one person who used to beg in downtown Portland, and he was quite disfigured, obviously blind, and I always wondered, should I be giving him money? Then there was another time when I was nicely dressed and along with many other people, and we were all walking into a restaurant, but across the front door of the restaurant, a man was laying down, and I didn't know what to do, and all of us walked around him. Obviously, he was a street person, and none of us stopped to ask him, "Are you okay?" So I have many images in my mind, and I would imagine you have images too. Pope Francis has designated today the 33rd week of Ordinary Time as World Day of the Poor. This is our second World Day of the Poor designated by Pope Francis. As I read his message to us for this year, he had a strong theme of listening. And he said, when the poor in their brokenness cry out to God, God hears them. And if God hears them, we are to hear them too. And if we can't hear the cry of the poor, we can't hear God. Probably most of you have seen that newspaper that vendors sell downtown Portland called Street Roots. And it's they sell it because they're poor and they supplement their income, or maybe it's their only income, by selling those newspapers. And the newspaper really has great articles. I always find something that I enjoy reading when I pick up their newspapers. And a couple weeks ago, there was a man who was an article about him. His name was given as DJ. He is one of the street vendors. And he said he experienced a failed relationship, depression, and drugs. He said he never thought he'd be able to live on the streets, but now he's had to learn to live on the streets. And he's trying to pull himself out of that by selling the Street Roots newspaper. And in the interview, he was asked what he would most like to say. He said, "I'm a person. I'm not somebody that needs to be thrown away. I'm not a bad person. A lot of these people on the street are not that either. They're people. People just like everyone else." And what Pope Francis is saying is we need to listen to people like DJ. And it's easy for us to create walls and to protect our own little piece of property. But Pope Francis is asking us to recognize that we are all one people. We are all one family of children of God. This last week, all of us on the staff were interviewed with a view to Thanksgiving coming up. We were asked, what do we have to be thankful for? And immediately, I thought of my faith, my family, this parish community here. I have health, I have wealth, I never have to worry about food or clothing. And on Thanksgiving, all of us will be considering the things that we have to be thankful for. And Thanksgiving seems to open up a season of being thankful, journeying towards Christmas, and focusing on what we can do for others. If you remember in the story from last week, which comes just before this episode in the Gospel, there was a story of the widow. And the widow put her last coin in the basket. And I wouldn't have told the widow to put her last coin in the basket, and I don't know that Jesus would have told her to do that either. But it does show what needs to be on our hearts. And Pope Francis didn't talk about giving money in this particular message, but part of what we do to assist the poor and to assist our world is through our giving. I thought about holding up a dollar bill, but I've been given so much in life, and that doesn't make sense. I brought with me a $100 bill, and I probably should have brought several $100 bills, because I'm so aware I've been given a great deal in life. And there's such a temptation to look at these $100 bills or whatever we have and try to hoard them for ourselves. But throughout the scriptures, when God gives blessings, blessings are meant to be shared. And over again, we see God blessing someone like Abraham. God blesses Abraham, and then God tells Abraham, and all the nations of the earth will find blessing through you. And the nations of the earth are to find blessing through us. So today, we have the Campaign for Human Development. They do marvelous work. St. Vincent de Paul is very active in all sorts of projects in our parish, reaching out to people in most need. And on Thanksgiving Day, coming up this Thursday, our collection, the entire collection, will go towards the charitable works of St. Vincent de Paul. Right now, we're undertaking a food and toy drive. Next week, in the vestibule, you'll see our annual giving tree, and on the tree, you can take a tag for specific gifts for people, or you can take a tag to indicate that you'll be bringing in a gift card from Fred Meyers for people. And I'm very aware that our parish holds up these ministries. In addition to holding up the spiritual life of people and the world, it holds up the more physical needs of people, working to alleviate poverty. It's this parish that holds up St. Vincent de Paul, that makes the word get out about the Campaign for Human Development. And so many of us, including myself, follow a basic principle of not only supporting directly the charitable works, but supporting our parish. So in our family, we give about half of our charitable giving to the church, which supports all of this, and half to the charities. Then Pope Francis focuses on personal involvement, listening, being in touch with the poor. And I wish he gave some specifics, because as I read his message, I had to think, now, how can I do that? I'm not always sure how. I am aware that in my family, most of our families, there's people much poorer than myself, some people who struggle. and perhaps we can be in touch with the people in our extended families or our close families that are most in need. I know in a few weeks, I think it's on December 19, people will be delivering food baskets. And that's a way of being in touch with people as we knock on their doors and deliver the basket. A couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was at Faith Cafe. Faith Cafe, it provides a meal every Sunday for many of the homeless, but all people in poverty in downtown Beaverton. And our church takes a turn about every 7 weeks or so, and it was our turn. And on our turns, our Knights of Columbus, the men are all in there, along with a lot of the women too, cooking. Many parishioners are there setting up, serving the food. I enjoyed having conversations with the people that came in, and then cleaning up. So that was 3 weeks ago. Our next time, we're privileged to be able to serve on December 23, the day before Christmas Eve. And for many of those folks, that'll be the only Christmas celebration they have. For some of them, it's the only time that they get out and socialize with anyone. And of course, there'll be more people. 3 weeks ago, there was 88 people. There'll be lots more people for our Christmas celebration and a fabulous dinner. It's a way of being there with people. The gospel today, which follows right after the widow who put in her last coin, says that the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will be falling from the sky, the powers in heaven will be shaken. These are all these things that we take for granted. They're temporal. Those are going to be taken away. The Apostle Paul says, what lasts, the three things that last, are faith, hope, and love. And we can be a people of love. I'll read two quotes from Pope Francis's message. Pope Francis says, we can ask ourselves how the plea of the poor, which rises to the presence of God, can fail to reach our own ears or leave us cold and indifferent. On this World Day of the Poor, we are called to make a serious examination of conscience to see if we are truly capable of hearing the cry of the poor. And he says, each individual Christian and every community is called to be an instrument of God for the liberation and promotion of the poor and for enabling them to be fully a part of society.